Hi guys, this is Nadya and Andreeva from spinachandyoga.com, and this is an interview series, Happy Belly, to celebrate the launch of my book. And today we have a very special interview with my friend Cate Stillman, the founder of Yoga Healer. Cate is a yoga instructor and Ayurvedic teacher and a super successful businesswoman who created a huge empire of people who are into conscious health, wellness, and they're willing to do and learn about it all online. So Cate, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about a slightly different perspective on digestion, basically about Agni.
Yeah, well, great. And congratulations on your book. I've read it. It's awesome. And I'm so glad that, just a very approachable book about, how do you move deeper into your body is out there, especially for people who are into yoga.
Thank you. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit about what is Agni, to just give people a general understanding of what that word means.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you get hungry and you feel that nature of your hunger, that's Agni. And my sense is that a lot of us actually have been trained away from our hunger, and so we don't worship it. So from a holistic medicine standpoint, the fire itself is in charge of the entire biochemistry, like the transition from the outer ecosystem to the inner ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the hunger itself is the way that our body transmits its desire for more, more from outside to come into inside.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I have a 6-year-old, and we've never fed her when she wasn't hungry. I mean, even with nursing, I mean, the whole time. And so she never eats when she's not hungry. And people offer kids food all the time. I mean, people offer
Yeah.
each other food all the time. There's just a lot of food out there in the more affluent world. And she's like, no, I'm not hungry. And I'm like, God, she's good. She knows she's worshiping her Agni. And for those who are really into yoga, there's like everything in the world of yoga and Hinduism, there's a deity for it. And so Agni Vesa is the deity of Agni. And so this idea I always find when people aren't that in touch with their metabolism, they're not in touch with their body's weight, like are they heavy, are they light,
Yeah.
that worshiping Agni is really the way to go. Start paying a lot of attention and then giving offerings of your awareness to what's happening at that place where you get hungry is really the starting point.
Yeah, and there's so many things that when you're saying it, I want to dive deeper into. And I think one of the things is worshiping the hunger, because a lot of people are actually scared of hunger. So they do whatever they can to avoid feeling it,
Yeah.
when in reality it is your body communicating to you, and it's an opportunity to kind of check in and understand what's happening. But also the concept of digestive fire is very foreign to most Westerners, having like a bonfire in the stomach. And another thing that would like to explore before we go into how to treat that digestive fire is Agni is not only in our digestion, right?
Right.
Agni is in every cell. So if we look
Right.
at this larger concept of Agni, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, so every cell has a capacity to basically communicate, right? And a lot of that communicating between what goes into the cell and what comes out of the cell happens through Agni. So Agni also is everything that has to do with transformation. So information in, information out is just movement. But if there's something that happens at the level of intelligence, then there's transformation happening. And so Agni, I mean, and that brings up a whole other level. So there's the physical digestion transformation of, inputs in, inputs out that don't look the same. And then there's another level of, well, what happens when we take the concept of Agni and apply it to the 5 koshas, to the 5 different bodies, right? So then what we've been talking about is Agni on the physical level, but then there's Agni on every level. The digestion of prana, has to be an Agni for that,
Yep.
for the prana to really turn into a deeper energy. On the mind level, and this is where I know you and I both see just chaos in our clients, is like they're not able to digest all the mental thoughts and impressions that come in through the day, and it leads to adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, autoimmune issues, sleep issues, the list goes on. That's an Agni issue from
Yeah.
Ayurveda.
And that's, I think, it is such a global aspect of our well-being. It's keeping the Agni healthy, not too low, not too high. What happens if Agni on the digestive level is too low? How would
Well,
somebody know, like, my Agni is low?
yeah, I like the word slow
Okay.
versus low, like that Manda Agni, right? When
Mm-hmm.
there's like someone that naturally has, like my husband and I have we have a lot of built-in sustenance in our bodies. Like we just kind of came with it. We come from like strong, hardy folk, and so we don't need a ton of fuel to have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of energy and to do a lot. We love to eat, but that's different, right? Like that's totally different from what our body needs. So it's
Yeah.
very easy for someone with a slower metabolism that really just doesn't need a ton of stuff, from the outer ecosystem to optimize energy. It's very easy to overwhelm the digestifier with too much food. And then that there's it really is a fire. And I know you know this, but just for everyone out there,
Yeah.
it's like imagine you're building a campfire and the fire's going strong and then you put way too many logs on it, right? You ate way too big a meal. What's going to happen to your fire, right?
Yep.
It is a smoky mess. And that same thing happens with, in our belly. And we start to just not fully transform the food into energy, into nutrients, into waste. And so guk gets in the way. Ama
Yep.
gets in the way. So there's that. And then there's also people that just don't have, this happens a lot, I find, with usually with like more like adrenal fatigue, chronic
Mm-hmm.
fatigue, where someone's just been overdoing everything and they've been using their Agni so much more in the mental plane, and just like running around, workaholic, pushing through boundaries, not observing that like their
Mm-hmm.
body actually needs to be in a daily like synchronized
Yeah.
cycle of nurturance. And then that can also lead to burnout, right? When you think of like what's burnout, there's something going on obviously with Agni because we're talking about fires
Yep.
and flames and campfires and all that. And that can have a very physical component that then the person finds out like, oh my, I can't digest anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to be able to eat that and it was fine. It was great. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice my digestion. And now I notice that I eat something and I get bloated and I get feel heavy and exhausted and that's also that's different than slow Agni, but it's a different kind of like a lower Agni or not a strong metabolism.
So, in what I'm hearing, low Agni, in terms of, not that we would encourage people to self-diagnose, but again, in terms of understanding the body better and feeling it more, low Agni can show up as inability to digest food, maybe not being physically hungry, even though the food looks appetizing,
Yeah.
and feeling heavy after meals, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and then just even waking up with a coated tongue and that like plucky feel like waking if you wake up and you feel heavy,
Yep.
right? I mean, it's like if you're not waking up and bouncing out of bed and I don't care how old you are, right? Like 'cause that actually doesn't have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's just that idea of like waking up being like, wow, I'm light, I'm free, I can move, it's a new day, I'm uplifted. Like all those are signs that Agni is healthy. And the signs of like waking up and being behind the eight ball or being depressed or overwhelmed or sluggish or heavy or not in love with yourself
Over the world.
or the world, right? And with everybody else, then that's all to me, those are all signs that there's Agni needs improvement. Not
Yeah.
even the Agni needs improvement. Your relationship with Agni needs improvement.
Yeah.
Is really how
So
I see it.
let's talk about this relationship with low Agni. How do we nurture it to slowly start building it back up? So when somebody usually wakes up and they're feeling the way you described, so they feel heavy, they're kind of not looking forward to their day. Usually what most people do, they kind of drag themselves out of bed and take some sort of a stimulant, which it can be in terms of coffee, it can be strong tea, sugar, whatever it is. That's the way to kind of stimulate them up into feeling a little bit better.
Hmm.
And that's not a sign necessarily of respecting the Agni or digestive fire. How can somebody start changing that behavior to nurture the fire?
Yeah, I mean, first thing, just to look back and say, how did I get here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what could I have done to get me? Because if I don't do that, then even if I start doing other things, it it might not actually add up. It might not actually be that effective,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and this is just, coming, it's like Judgment Day. It's like, just tally it up, look back, like, where are we at from an objective witness perspective. It has nothing to do with like self-flagellation. It's just looking at, how did I get to here? Because one thing, basic teaching also in Ayurveda and holistic medicine in general is like, how is the relationship between cause and effect, and that what's showing up in the body is showing up because of the past. Right. And so if you don't want to feel like you feel now in the present, you look back at what you've been doing in the past, and you have to then change the future along the lines of the information. So in that process itself, there's Agni is stimulated by that, like just that, because you're digesting what's happened in the past with your cognition, with your buddhi, right? Or with your vijnana maya kosha, like you're stimulating a higher level of intelligence. And you're saying like, okay, well, if I look back, it looks like I've been having the majority of calories after 6 p.m. I guess that's not working for me. I mean, and you guys, this is so hard because this is what's going on in culture, and this is what everybody else around you is doing. And so it's like, part of the mind will say, well, I can't change that. So what can I do instead? Oh, I can pop a bunch of digestive enzymes, or I can start drinking cumin, coriander, fennel tea, or I can, do something that I can take some metabolic enhancers, right? But honestly, yes, you can. And yes, those are like nice little Band-Aids on a gaping wound. So do they help? Yes, they totally help. I mean, you can pop some Trick-O-Two tablets of ginger, black pepper, and long pepper after you overeat. And will that help? Yes, you will have less ama on your tongue the next day. You might wake up and not feel quite as bad.
Yeah.
And it's a little Band-Aid on a gaping wound. So when we get like, okay, culture's out of balance, like everyone else is feeling like I am, and which is why most people feel like hell as they get older, because they have this that's not sustainable to the physiology. Because this is the other thing, for no matter what your constitution is and no matter what your Agni is, as you get older, you need to respect Agni more and more and more and more and more and more and more until you die. And that's how it goes. And that's not something that anyone is exempt from. So as we get older, the reason that happens, the reason that's such a natural part of an organized universe, is that we get smarter from our past experience.
Well, supposedly.
We have the potential anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And so we get smarter. Our whole physiology is trying to get more and more efficient, meaning you don't need to do as much like dynamic transfer between outer and inner ecosystem. It happens more on the subtler planes. You're able to transmit more at the level of consciousness with plants. You're able to receive on a deeper, more subtle level. That's how we're designed, like it, right? And it's like, then if we look back and we say like, okay, I've been eating a heavy dinner most nights for the last 20 years or something, and I get that it's starting to have a lot of effect. Unless you change that and start having earlier, lighter dinner, starting to go to bed earlier, waking up, hydrating, defecating, and then doing something to coordinate your physiology with prana. Unless you do that, forget about it. Honestly, like you cannot solve the problem otherwise.
You are.
Or buy my special Agni enhancer that's at yogahealer.com in the shop.
Okay.
Right? Because that's what we want. We want to be like, oh no, I can just buy that. Actually, I think it's called Firestarter. And it's like, yeah, you can just buy that. And it's a little Band-Aid. But it can help, But unless you address the bigger problem.
And again, there are so many things that you touched upon, from being honest with ourselves, which doesn't come easy to a lot of people, and digesting past experiences. So looking back, learning from your own experiences versus waiting for somebody to give you the answer. And that not jumping necessarily to quick solutions, which can be in terms of supplement, herbs, or even spices, which can be helpful, but not necessarily address the root cause, and instead looking at the behavior aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yoga is hard. right? It's like if it wasn't, like everyone would be an advanced yogi because it's like amazing to have that kind of freedom in the body. Like, and not just the physical yoga is hard, but like every kind of yoga. So much of what I teach now is like the yoga of business. I help wellness providers and yoga teachers make more money. And I'm like, this is a yoga, and you will go through fires. The fire of yoga is is tapas. The relationship between tapas and Agni to me is like it's just synonymous. Like you have to go through a fire, meaning that like anything that goes through a fire is transformed. It's a little different than the idea of like just walking through a door into another room because the idea is like it's pretty easy to open a door
Yeah.
and walk through it and get to the other side. The idea of walking through a fire, there's nothing that sounds easy about that. And we
That's what
get
I
that
feel like with the book. Walking through fire big time.
that's each time, right? And then you do it and you're like, ah. And the same thing's true with a person changing their habits. If they say like, okay, I'm going to eat 15 minutes earlier and I'm going to go to bed 15 minutes earlier and if I'm rested, going to get up 15 minutes earlier. And I'm going to start doing that. And once I'm stabilized there, I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to do that again. And to do that again. And maybe in 6 months from eating dinner an hour earlier and going to bed an hour earlier and waking up an hour earlier. Now, it sounds maybe too easy or too hard. But the idea is that if this gains traction, the effect that this will have on your long-term health is exponential.
Yeah.
So as we start to worship Agni and we literally start to let our awareness pay attention, right? Start to, the whole idea of worshiping, right? It's like, what are you paying attention to? Like, where do you bow? Right? I just love that whole idea. It's so not the way I was raised. I was raised with egoic primacy or supremacy. But it's like this idea of like, there's like the part of you that just wants to eat a late dinner and watch TV and not care about this stuff and have perfect digestion at the same time. What part of you has to just say, you know what? I bow, I surrender. I will take the lead of something other than myself. And that's that whole idea of like worship. Like if you can worship your Agni, right, then it's going to work. And if you have habits that worship Agni, then you're going to experience a ton more energy. And that'll happen slowly over time. But then basically in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, you've totally rewritten the way you're going to age.
Yeah.
And you've totally rewritten the kind of pain you're going to experience. Because if there's ama in your joints, you're going to have joint pain. There's no option there. There's no pill that can fix that. Right? And so if you really look at like, wow, okay, I'm going to buck up. I'm going to deal. I'm going to change my habits slowly over time. And the nice thing about it is, I mean, you and I both know, you start doing this and you start getting an immediate side benefit.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to say, because I feel like most people listening to it, they'll be like, it sounds very painful. It sounds very slow, and it sounds like it's going to take a lot of effort. But in reality, living in integrity with your body and worshiping the Agni, it feels really good. It's like being in integrity with yourself feels amazing. It feels much better than eating ice cream or cookies.
Right.
Because it's a completely different level of being with yourself in a relationship that's not based on cheating and kind of trying to get away with it.
Right. Right. Totally.
So,
I mean, there's that, just that blunt level of honesty that there's no lying, right? The body does. I love that whole idea of like the body doesn't lie, right? It's
and
like
you
it's
can't
just
hide
giving
from
you.
it. Like you can't. That whole idea of, for example, cheat meals. Like you can't cheat your body. Your body knows, and you can't get away with consequences.
Yeah. And I also want to say too, for like those listening that are like, I can't deal with this right now. It's like, fair enough. Fair enough. Put it on your schedule though. So if you're like in the middle of a big project and you're like, you know what, I can't change my habits. I've got to finish. It's going to take me months. Put on your schedule, like put a big X and say like, I'm starting and get some support. That's why I have my yoga health coaching certification program is I'm helping yoga teachers become coaches in this, and they all are more or less working online. So anyone who's like, I want a coach, like I need someone for accountability, guidance, and support, like, yeah, then you probably do need a coach. And guess what? They're out there now. So it's so nice.
Yeah.
Just put it on your schedule. Like, I'm eventually going to deal with this because I kind of get right now that it's not going to go away on its own. There's no magic practitioner. There's no magic supplement.
Yeah. And it's going back. I think it's amazing to have support, and especially the coach who can help you to move on your own evolution instead of forcing you to do things or giving you things to take to alleviate symptoms.
Yeah.
It's very different when somebody takes your hand and kind of like, okay, like this is the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, and I get you, and I get all the different pressures that, are acting on you. I get your worldview and how you think about things and how you prioritize things. And I also get that what you're communicating is that you want to shift. And
Yeah.
that's the part of you I want to really embrace, and that someone to listen like that and to start to nurture the part of the client that's emerging, that's saying like, I need to climb out of the hole, and supporting that part of
Yeah.
the person. Yeah. It's
Yeah, and
huge.
it's amazing. I think all of us, no matter what stage we're in, it helps to have guide and support. It makes your journey so much faster.
Yeah, and I'm actually of the mind now. I mean, because so much of the work that I do on a higher level is with the evolutionary oriented population, the integral population, and the work that's being done there is all on interconnectivity and higher levels of basically people coming together at higher levels of consciousness to explore higher levels of consciousness, and more or less, it's like you have to do your practices on your own, and that's just a prerequisite for how
Yes.
we're now able to come together. And so I look at that, and I get that the idea of evolving our health on our own, it's asinine. I swore on your blog, sorry about that. But it is. It's totally outdated. It's like it's part of an old patriarchy, like isolated, outdated model. It worked for them, like great, but we're not there now.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea that you can evolve yourself while your whole culture, like all your friend groups, your family groups, whatever, is staying in the same place, is like it's making it so hard, and it's also totally limiting what's able to
Yeah.
happen for you.
Yeah.
So
I
then being
totally
part of
agree.
a group that's also evolving, that's like where you're at, and some people are a little ahead of you and some people are behind you, and there's a guide who's like a few giant steps ahead of you saying
Yeah.
like, we're coming over here, and there's some major roadblocks in the way, and I gotta help you navigate those.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea. So another thing that I want to talk to is appetite.
Yeah.
Appetite and basically more of a either interchangeable Agni or high Agni, because what I see a lot is that people will say that they're hungry all the time, but at the same time they can't digest food properly, which can be partially because they're not assimilating and the body is not getting what they need, or they're not receiving what they're eating on any level besides kind of pushing stuff down. So there's no nourishment that happens. And there's also, like, what's your perspective on this high appetite, but at the same time, inability to digest?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have this yogi detox I've led for since 2002, about twice a year with big groups, and so I've seen so much about what happens when people come in with this. When they come into a very short term process of trying to straighten out their digestion, absorption, and take their whole physiology
Yeah.
to another level of integration. And particularly, I've just when you're talking about that, I was thinking of a few different clients, particularly in Driggs, Idaho, where I would do this live. The situation, and they eating hungry, and they have food, and then they do a little exercise, and they take a shower and have their breakfast, and then they go to work and they'd have a snack mid morning, and then they were never, often not the person wasn't overweight, but they're just eating like a lot throughout the
Yeah.
and had, that experience of hyperglycemia where they otherwise would get like hangry or crash or just kind of be, I don't know. To me, it was like really, it's almost a really weird egoic thing too, where it's like they're so wrapped up in how they feel that they can't really relax into living from a larger perspective. That's what tends to happen with, which is, and I'm not trying to like point fingers and make mass
Mm-hmm.
judgments, even though I'm just made a mass judgment. But the idea is that it's limiting. Like that way of nourishment from the way that the human physiology is organized is incredibly and limiting in terms of like how our physiology can be optimized to act in the world and to do something, to really like be part of evolution in
Mm-hmm.
action. And that if we look at an ashram type eating schedule, like at any kind of yogic,
Yeah.
basically eat once a day with like a little bit of fruit or something simple in the morning or porridge and a little bit of tea at night or something else that's incredibly light, broth, soup, something like that. Main meal, middle of the day. Why are they doing? That's what, to me, it's like I always want to go there. Like, why do more or less ashrams do that? Whether matter if it's like a Zen monastery or an Indian, yoga place or a Benedictine monk monastery, it's like more or less we say the same thing. They're up praying super early or meditating or chanting, and they have this eating schedule. And it's like, well, there's something to awakening to higher planes of being and nourishing the body that have a lot to do with eating them in the middle of the day and then not really eating for distraction at other times. And granted, they're not doing much in an ashram. They're sitting around. They're not running marathons and training
Yeah.
for tries and all that a lot of people listening are doing. But we can still say, like, okay, there's definitely something to hitting higher planes of mental, emotional, spiritual connectivity that have to do with not feeding ourselves every 2 hours. And that when we feed ourselves every 2 hours, we're going to create an enormous amount of mind chatter too. It's just going to fuel a more superficial level of mind. So there's a lot of different components going on here. One thing that I've seen, to bring it back to the yogi detox, is often with people that come in with this hyperglycemia, tikshna agni, they're eating all the time, they're super hungry, their digestion almost feels raw,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of bile, but it's of poor quality, right? High bile, poor quality, meaning like there's a lot of it, but it doesn't work very well. So it's almost like if you've ever had the experience of like you have a lot of fuel in your engine, but it's really low grade fuel, like
Mm-hmm.
you can't, it's not a good riding experience.
Yeah.
So what we want to do then is optimize the part that can digest the bile. And so when I work with someone like that, I mean, the first thing I do is like say like, okay, welcome to Hell Week. If you want to get this over really fast, it's just going to be like Hell Week. So try to have a light schedule, try to take, nice baths and nice walks and have some, and you're just going to eat 3 times a day. And maybe mix a little cumin, coriander, and fennel before your meals and just break the habit. And it takes about 7 days, and then the habit's broken. And if they're like a normal, healthy like person, except for the Agni issue, and they don't have massive degenerative
Mm-hmm.
issues, then it honestly, I've seen time and again massive turnaround within 7 days. And then if they stabilize around their new behavior, within a month, it's a thing of the past. It's just gone. And that to me has been like, just from an observer standpoint, I'm like, holy cow, like you worship Agni Vesa, he shows up. And it is a he god, but he shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's the whole concept of not grazing and not using food to distract yourself and not being afraid to get to the point where you're ready to digest food, which can show up as physical hunger, and it's a good sign. It it does take, again, going back to what you said in the beginning, it does take honesty, like asking, why am I snacking or grazing all the time? What is it doing for me? And being willing to create change in terms of habits.
Yeah, exactly. And often, I mean, what I've found with so many people over the years with the detoxing is that the the level of mind that has the problem is not the level of mind that's going to be able to really understand the nature of the deeper issues, which is a big freaking deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're trying to analyze it, if you're in it and you're analyzing it, forget it. Because you're still at that superficial, like
Yeah.
like you're still generating a lot of emotional thought response that has the intrinsic imbalance within it. So you can't get perspective. But what I find is that after people have gotten through Hell Week, the insights that come up at the end of Hell Week or 3 or 4 or 5 days in, and Hell Week doesn't always have to be Hell Week too. I'm kind of making fun of it, but it's
Yeah.
like, yes, you will have to deal. Like you will have to walk through some fires, and you're going
Well,
to have to drink water between meals. And as you do, you're going to realize that, like, wow, I'm actually my physiology has more thirst than it does hunger.
yeah. Yeah, and I think you're 100% right in terms of thirst, because we can easily mistaken it and try to eat something when we are actually thirsty. But also in terms of the Hell Week, I would think of it as an experiment week.
Yeah, totally.
You basically trying something which is based on the experience of many other people who had success with it, and seeing if it's gonna fit you. But you're taking measurement only after a week, not after the first day, because after the first second day it's easy to start giving yourself justifications for, well, but my blood sugar is low right now, and if I don't eat, like, I'm gonna pass out. So it's a matter of letting go of those justifications and taking in the wisdom of what worked in the past, at least for a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it really is too. I mean, the way that I teach it in Yogi Detox is it's the deepest level of nourishment week. Like you're just starting to nourish all five senses instead of just your tongue, right? So you're getting a lot of nourishment through your skin, through your ears, through your eyes. Like you're really allowing yourself to receive and to attune to the natural rhythms, including the natural rhythm of Agni, which is totally disturbed right now. It's
Yeah.
totally disturbed. And so it's going to put up a little temper tantrum, and maybe it'll do that every 5 minutes. I mean, it might do it every hour. And if we can put that in the larger perspective, then it goes swimmingly.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's like if you think like, wow, I'm going to have a lot of trouble with this, then schedule like 3 massages or 7 massages. Honestly, it's like that might cost a little bit of money up front, but in terms of like long-term benefit of balancing your blood sugar and balancing your absorption, and balancing the seat of health in your body, it's a very easy investment. Scheduling time to meditate, to
Yeah.
go to a more easy, restorative, or gentle level 1 kind of yoga class. Those are the ways that it's gonna keep tuning you in and keep
Yeah.
allowing the intelligence of Agni to become more and more present.
And I have one tip. If somebody is actually, guys, if you're going to do it, what I found in my experience is I noticed that my Agni I would naturally get hungry for dinner around 4:35 p.m. And the thing that came up for me mentally was like, well, okay, I'm eating at 4:30 or 5 p.m., but then there is this dinner time when I'm supposed to be with my partner and my friends, and that was like very confusing to me. I'm hungry now. If I wait longer, it's just going to be all messed up. Then I'm not even sure what's happening. But if I eat at 5, then I'll still be sitting at the table. What do I do if I'm not hungry anymore? And it's just a matter of going a little bit against the social expectations. And I think you can talk a little bit about it in one of your previous either calls or conferences, in terms of making it more of a social interaction versus time to just eat together.
Yeah.
And for me, it was huge. As soon as I let go of that I should be eating when everyone else is eating for dinner, I was totally
Right.
calm and peaceful eating my dinner at 5 p.m. and then sitting around with everyone.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people listening have already probably made a lot of adjustments with alcohol socially with this, of like everyone's having a few glasses of wine and you don't, because you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night, or you don't want to feel, so behind the next day. You want to wake up and be able to do some yoga or some
Yeah.
meditation or some pranayama, and you want to be clear, and you want to be, aligned with your spiritual capacities, instead of having totally like shut that out, black that out with the consumption of alcohol. So many people you're already moving against the sort of outdated cultural grain, and you're more at the forefront of like, you know what? I mean, like I have a reputation for bringing mineral water to parties. I'm like BYOM, and I just, and it started with going on mountain bike rides and realizing, because I bike mostly with guys, and afterwards I'll drink a beer, and I'm like, that's the last thing my body wants is alcohol after
Yeah.
expending, you know, whatever, burning 2,000 calories and, etc. So I started bringing like my Pellegrino. It'd be on ice in the cooler with their beers, and afterwards I'd like down a liter of Pellegrino, and I'd be like, this is amazing. And then I started to realize that like there was never really any reason to drink socially unless I had really kind of like pre-planned for it, like I'm going to have a glass of wine on Friday when there's
Yeah.
that cocktail party because blah blah blah, like because I'm totally aligned with that. I'm gonna, and if I don't want it, then fine. But like that huge shift, it's the same shift. It's the same exact thing. It's just saying like I'm not going to poison myself for the social ease of other
Yep.
people.
Yep.
That
That's
would be
huge.
ridiculous.
Yeah. So, Kate, I know that you have a lot more to share with people who are willing to explore, as you call it, their sacred anatomy and learn about Ayurveda and how to respect their body. Where can they find more information about it?
Yeah, I mean, if you just pop over to yogahealer.com and get any of the opt-ins, whether it's the 3 Savvy Secrets or the free Ayurveda training, that's like the best way to start is there. And listen to the podcast. There's a lot of great interviews. And if you want a deeper engagement, you want to take a course. There's Yogi Detox, which is you can just go to yogidetox.com. And I do have a 9-month Living Ayurveda course, which is a very practical, progressive exploration through your sacred anatomy over 9 months. And that starts every end of September. And we have a prep school for people who register in, March for it. But yeah, those are the best ways.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Kate, for being with us. And guys, make sure to subscribe so you get all other Happy Belly interviews and check out the book on Amazon. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm so excited for your work to get out
Thanks.
there. You bet.